This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, we're gonna, 3:32. We're gonna call the meeting to order. She's gonna get this going before we get going. Have roll call, please.
Tracy Flukie.
Yep.
Kyle Jago.
Here.
Dale Schmidt.
Here.
Kim Shannon.
Here.
Sharon Cowell. Here.
Thank you. I'll stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Hopefully everybody had a nice look. Motion on the agenda. Any changes or motion to approve it?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Kim,
I'll second.
second by Kyle. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Action on the minutes from the May 13th, Pike Head Committee meeting.
Motion to accept.
Motion by Kim,
I'll second it.
second by Kyle. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item 6, comments from the public. Must be limited to items not on the agenda. Must state name and address. Limited to 5 minutes. Board's role is to listen and not discuss the item. Personal issues cannot be discussed, nor individuals named. And board is not able to take action at this meeting. There's nobody online, and nobody in here, anybody else on the committee has something that's on the agenda that you'd like to bring up on the public. We'll continue on. Item 7 is reports and updates. It looks like Ashwaubenon Public Safety, you're listed first, so we can go to you guys. Brian in the back. Whichever,
All right,
Brian.
I have a report to hand out, summarizes our traffic enforcement activities for the first half of 2024. Overall, we're seeing some decent trends. I'll touch upon staffing. We have 2 officers going through field training right now, so our current staffing is 54 of 56 authorized positions. 2 of them are in field training. One is going through the academy, and one is currently working on day shift as a paramedic only. That particular officer will do the academy in January. So proactive traffic enforcement has been up. Going back to 2015, we've had the most productive traffic stop quarter in the second quarter of 2024 with almost 1,300 proactive traffic stops done. And that is traffic stops outside of the specialized deployments. That is officers working the road, doing their normal proactive police patrol. We have asked that they be more proactive, and over the past several years, they have responded to that quite nicely. Of that, traffic citations have also gone up as well. 728 last quarter, and first 2 quarters of this year are higher than even some previous years. So good trend numbers there. OWIs, our officers are being a bit more proactive with those. We're already past the, had a pretty good quarter this past quarter for proactive OWI enforcement. Speed has been kind of a hot topic issue lately, so looking at our speed numbers and speed locations. If you look at page 3, speed citations have been trending up over the past several years, back up to what they had been historically. And that's just citations. Speed warnings are very high. Our number of speed warnings for the first 2 quarters of 2024 are nearly as high as they've been over the past several years. So we do stress very proactive speed enforcement, but as far as the decision to issue a citation or not. Our officers do have a lot of discretion with that. We trust our officers to use their judgment. We do try to encourage certain focus on hot spots and certain focus on complaint areas to be maybe a little less tolerant in those particular areas, but we do have some general guidelines and our officers do have some discretion there. So yeah, they're doing a fair amount of warnings, doing a fair amount of citations. Altogether, they're doing a good amount of speed enforcement that's been trending up. So along with that, we've also tried to assist in that regard with getting more capable speed measuring equipment. As Commander Baxter outfits our new squad cars, we've already got a couple that are in service. We are getting brand new radar units in these squad cars as they're built, and we are incorporating not just a frontward facing radar antenna, but also a rearward facing radar antenna. So that helps for a couple things. First off, we're parked on the side of a road, say Cormier Road, that allows us to get traffic coming and going. So if traffic approaching us from either direction, traffic going away from us either direction. That also allows us to be more capable if we're doing moving radar as well, because we can actually get the speeds of approaching and receding vehicles as our squad cars are in motion. We've also been replacing some of our older, outdated speed laser units. That's been an ongoing project. And then we are on the plans to do a little bit of refresher training, not just on the newer radar units, but also radar speed measurement and laser speed measurement in general. So that has been an issue that has come to our attention. We do have some hot spots, but I'm happy to say that our staff has been responding, and we've been trying to give them better tools and training to be even more effective in that regard. If you look at page 4, I was able to plot out, this is just for 2024 second quarter. You'll see several locations dotted on here. The red stars on there are locations of speed citation violations, and the blue diamonds are locations of speed warning violations. So every time they do a electronic citation, they have to pick the exact location where the violation occurred. And this chart, or this map here, keys off of that geographic data. So where you see the dot, that's where the violation took place. Pretty good correlation where a lot of our heavy traffic is. Pretty decent enforcement along Lombardi, along Oneida Street, along South Oneida, around Hanson. And that's really where we have some of the hot spots as far as crashes as well. So pretty happy to see a decent correlation there with speed enforcement and also some of our crash heavier locations. And depending on the time of the day, it's kind of challenging to get a good speed reading on Oneida and to be able to get out and affect the stop in a safe manner based on traffic. So I was pretty happy to see the frequency of speed enforcement on Oneida that we're seeing here. Going on to page 5, as far as some other types of violation categories, and if there's things that you guys would like to see in the future, I can parse those out as well. But I broke it down with traffic light and stop sign citations. Again, steadily going up there as well for the first 2 quarters of this year on a decent trajectory. And then along with this, we're coming across more unlicensed drivers. The bottom of that is driver's license citations by a quarterly basis for the past several years. As you can see in 2024, the first 2 quarters are some of the highest we've had. So we may stop somebody for a registration issue, we might stop them for an equipment issue, whatever it may be. And then come to find out that they're suspended, revoked, or don't have a driver's license. Like I said, our officers have discretion, but that's one of those things where very rarely would an officer give a warning on that. That almost universally results in citation or some sort of enforcement action, especially.
How many citations, Brian, you get before you actually, they get a citation, but at some point after so many citations, are they actually apprehended? Or is there not a...
So there's, for driver's license violations, there's not any custodial arrest that is done. If they've gotten one prior citation for operating without a license, the second one becomes a misdemeanor violation versus a forfeiture violation. So essentially legally about the same level as an ordinance violation. operating after revocation, depending on what they're revoked for. So if they're revoked for driving while suspended too many times, or fines or something kind of low level that leads to that, that remains a forfeiture violation. However, if they're revoked for drunk driving or something along those lines, then that right off the bat starts off as a misdemeanor traffic violation. Now, if they're found guilty, yes, they could by statute face some time locked up for that. It's rare to see people locked up or taken into custody, custodial arrest for a driver's license violation, but a couple prongs there, they are open to that.
Ryan, does this category include warrants on it? If someone has a warrant, or is that a separate category?
Nope, that'd be a separate category. And that is not reflected here, but in addition to warrants, I mean, there's other things that come out of proactive traffic enforcement, such as drug arrests, things of that nature. I don't have, unfortunately, a real easy way to parse that out from our traffic data at this time. But yeah, we do get a fair amount of warrants and criminal activity that comes to our attention through traffic stops. So it's kind of a good all-around traffic safety and crime prevention strategy.
Right.
Yes.
To go back a couple of items, you mentioned the number of warnings. Is that likely to change behavior, getting a warning? Or is there a way to track that? Or do you have just a sense, does that work? Does it help? Or
there's not really a way to track if that changes the person's behavior, but anytime somebody is stopped, that data is available in our records management system. So, for example, if I pull a vehicle over and I check the plate, I can get the return from the state to see if they're valid and all that. But I can also look in our countywide records management system to see if other agencies have had contact with that particular vehicle. If that's the case, that might change what could be a warning into a citation. But usually that extra step there is going to be on the stopping officer to check and verify that. So yeah, warnings, written warnings do not, there's not really a way to tell if that.
okay. I guess that would be the way to check is if do you see people that get a warning and then speeding, is there kind of a correlation there? Or that'd be hard to track. But,
yeah, not really.
but it sounds like.
Also, an officer there in the field can dig a little bit deeper and say, okay, well, how many times has this person been stopped, at least within Brown County? They're able to look it up that way. And that would usually factor in if they've had several contacts for that.
Okay.
Need to get a name like Rosendale, and then you won't have to worry. Slow down when you go.
Yeah.
All right, so crash data. If we look at page 6, we're talking about reportable crashes. So those are the ones that result in injury or result in damage over a certain threshold and get reported to the state and get included on people's driving records. Reportable crashes for the first 2 quarters of this year are down compared to last year. Going back several previous years, and you can see a dip back in 2020, obviously the COVID year. Rebounded kind of slowly after that, but hopefully we can keep that trending down here in 2024. We have not had any additional fatal crashes since 2020. However, I do have to provide a explanation with that. When I talk about fatal crashes, that's only in those areas that Ashwaubenon Public Safety responds as the primary law enforcement agency. So there was a fatal crash that we responded to in a fire EMS capacity on Highway 172. It was about a week and a half ago. And that was unfortunately the 4-occupant, 2-person fatality on 172 behind Best Buy. Brown County Sheriff's is the primary agency on that one. So when I pull these crash figures, I pull the crash figures for those areas that we're the primary agency on. Since that's within our wheelhouse, those are the areas that we have the most direct enforcement impact on as well. So yeah, that was a pretty tragic one. That's not reflected here, but for that reason, it was up on the freeway. Injury crashes are down as well this year so far. Hopefully we trend down with that as well. Now, as far as bicycle and pedestrian crashes in 2024, so far we have had 4. Back in January, we had one on Oneida Street south of Hanson. Pedestrian was crossing outside of a crosswalk wearing dark clothing and was struck by a vehicle exiting the parking lot of the roadway. May of this year, we had on Cormier, just east of Holmgren, a pedestrian who was intoxicated was leaving a concert venue wearing dark clothing and crossed Cormier outside of a crosswalk. June of this year, we had Lombardi at Ridge Road. Bicycle crossed Lombardi. It was in the crosswalk with a green light, struck by a left-turning vehicle. The vehicle had failed to yield. And then a couple days after that, Marley in April, we had a bicycle that had failed to stop for a stop sign, struck the side of a vehicle that had the right of way. And then last and certainly not least, we did participate in a Frogger pedestrian enforcement deployment on June 27th. We put 2 of our officers and 1 CSO Frog out there from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. This is part of a countywide effort by Wello that we coordinated with. We picked 2 uncontrolled crosswalks in the village. The first one was at Cormier and Pilgrim. We had 2 hours that we spent there. We had 2 citations that came out of that one, and we also do keep track of how many law-abiding motorists we had. Both location, I'm happy to report we had approximately 100 law-abiding motorists that passed through there. The second location was Holmgren and Marvell. Our officers spent a couple hours there. That yielded 1 citation and 2 warnings. There too, again, approximately 100 law-abiding motorists. Next deployment will be in August. And we'll probably be using the same locations just to see if numbers change at all for consistency.
Brian, I don't know if you were aware of it. I'm going in, I'm sure you didn't. But the street department was patching Cormier Road that day. They're putting tar down in the holes and cracks. So every place they put tar down, they had a couple pylons out so people would run through the tar. So I think that kind of had an effect on vehicle traffic because all of a sudden you've been weaving in and out of these pylons. So
yeah, and we'll see how people do in, I believe, end of August. I think that's kind of a good reason there for using the same locations.
Yeah,
because that would be a pretty significant change in traffic flow pattern.
Yeah.
So yeah, that'll be interesting to see how people do in the fall with that one.
This is good data, Brian, appreciate it. So do you actually, when you see a trend line changing up or down, do you study that to find out what's actually going on that's causing that trend to change? Or because you guys got a lot of history here, a lot more than I realized.
So I've gone back in the past and looked at what we've had for staffing. So our staffing has come up. I think there's been some other things. And if you look back in 2020, for example, 2020, obviously that year was a rough year due to COVID. We pretty much stopped a good chunk of proactive activity in 2020 just to minimize those interpersonal contacts.
Mm-hmm.
And then things did not rebound as quick as I would have expected. It kind of took a few years, it seems, to spin things back up, both enforcement-wise. And oddly enough, even on the crash side of things, too, crashes didn't really start to rebound until a couple of years after that. And we're kind of I take that back. Enforcement activity didn't rebound. Crashes did rebound, but were at pre-COVID levels, which they have remained since then. Other things to try to look at is with enforcement activity, proactive enforcement activity. We do try to talk to our staff and see what kind of, if we're trying to focus on speed, for example, or intoxicated driving, and we're not seeing the activity that we would like to see. I try to identify the reasons why, whether it be better equipment, some refresher training, things of that nature. And we've also tried to incorporate a stronger emphasis on proactive traffic enforcement in our field training program, so that as soon as these officers are coming in the door, previously the focus of field training is obviously to get officers up to speed, so traffic was a component of that, but was probably not stressed in as great a significance as it should have been, based upon the significance it has for our village. So we've taken a look at that and tried to stress that more, with some dedicated speed measurement training, and then also freeing up officers to get a focus on that and really get taught that, hey, this is an enforcement priority for our agency coming right in the door.
Yeah.
I think we've seen some good results with that.
It's been noticeable too, because I've seen them sit on Pioneer Drive way towards the end. And I'm human too, so you pick up speed as you're going, right?
Yep.
But they're way on the opposite end, close to the park.
Mhm.
And people always turn the corner and try to pick up speed.
And some of this is kind of anecdotal as well. I mean, school zones a few years ago was a hot topic, so we've saturated school zones. And we've taken to the point where we're getting feedback unsolicited of, hey, we see you guys in the school zones, see you guys in the school zones. Okay, cool. So we've achieved, we're known to be in school zones, and then we can kind of adjust a little bit. Because in the mornings, we do have briefings, and we're pulling guys out of briefings to be in the school zones. So now there is that feeling of greater school zone enforcement and presence. So we're able to kind of adjust that a little bit, and we can do a little bit more training in the morning for things such as speed enforcement. Catch up on briefings, we've got greater departmental communication. All the stuff, we just got to be flexible with it as we're seeing the results that we want.
Thanks for the report. Great.
We're also going to be a pilot agency with Wisconsin DOT, that community maps program that does traffic crash analysis. One of the big shortcomings with that program was they didn't have a way to tie in enforcement data. So you could identify hotspots, but you didn't have a real easy way to see if your enforcement activity is matching those hotspots. We were selected to be one of a handful of pilot agencies in the state to roll that out as far as integrating enforcement data with that, which hopefully makes it a much more usable dashboard for us on the law enforcement side of things. So I'm hopeful that gets spun up here in the next few weeks, and that we'll have a voice in there to really make it much more useful as a tactical and management tool. So we'll see how that one goes.
Yeah, when you do your radar systems, do you lease that or do they actually purchase them?
No, we purchase those. So we purchase units for each of our frontline patrol squad cars. And what it consists of is kind of like a CPU, a box and display that gives you your squad speed and vehicle speed, and then at least one, if not two antennas. So if we have one, it just faces forward, and that can take traffic coming, going, stationary or mobile. And then what we've been doing now is incorporating rear antennas as well.
I only ask that question because technology changes so fast, not so much for radar, but sometimes people will rent, lease, rather so they can get the update. Sometimes that's more expensive too, but whatever. Good to know.
Any other questions for Brian? Brian, how long is the pilot program with the Wisconsin Maps? Do you know, is it a year or?
We'll see. They're just getting the data link set up in the next week or so that they can pull our citation data. And it's the same computer program for citation and crashes, so
Just trying to
I'm
coordinate.
not an IT guy, but I would think that will hopefully be fairly
Easy.
straightforward, but we'll see. Then the other issue is the design of it too, because you've got statisticians looking at certain things and you've got practitioners looking at other things. So they've got the nice heat maps, but we need to be able to track, okay, how are we doing over time versus just getting a fresh heat map every time we sign in. So I'm hopeful. We'll see.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Any other questions, anybody for Brian? Otherwise, thanks for the report. That's good. Next in line is Brian, Public Works.
All right, so I don't have any fancy maps or anything like that.
Oh, come on.
A little splash of color here.
So Brookwood and Lombardi Access Road, phase 1 of the project, that is open. There's still some minor punch list items, but that is open. The crew is currently working on completing the work out on Brookwood. They're hoping to be done in about a week and a half. So it's likely that there is a small portion of that sidewalk that won't be able to be installed. So you'll notice an awkward gap just because there has been some delays with some utility relocates. Industrial park reconditioning, that project's been awarded to Northeast Asphalt. They're scheduled to complete that work in late July or August. So yeah, with that, there is going to be some drainage improvements that you will see occurring in 2 weeks occurring out there. Design for West Main Ave Trail and the sidewalk extension. We've kind of ran into a roadblock with that. We're waiting to hear back from the county in regards to what we can do in regards to relocating the beam guard that goes up to Dutchman Creek, Ashwaubenon Creek. So right now we're just waiting to hear back from the county. They let us know that they probably will not have a response until September. Traffic signal controller replacement, that project's been awarded to Elmstar. All the materials have been reviewed. The order has been placed, likely to be installed later this summer or fall. All the traffic signal push button countdown timer, those replacements took place. City of Green Bay helped us with that through our intergovernmental agreement that we have. Design of the Packerland and Grand Street roundabout, I don't have any updates on that, but I have requested to have a meeting with the new highway commissioner, kind of talk about projects occurring in Ashwaubenon on the county highway system. That's all I have.
Can I bring us back to the top item?
Yeah.
Wood in Lombardi. That looks very nice.
Thanks.
I've been over there. I mean, it's beautifully done. I think that's going to have the intended outcome, so thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you guys for supporting it.
I talked to Brian earlier today about the Lombardi access road and that area up there, and I biked it this weekend. And it does, it looks great. If you're on the west end, you can see the RFBs on Argonne Street. I talked to Brian about the crosswalk being placed, because right now there's not actually painted lines. He said that's coming, and some of the signage will be coming as well to set that up a little bit more, both there and then further south on Argonne where Brookwood crosses. So that will be coming yet. The one thing I talked to Brian about, and I just wanted to bring it up here, and I would ask people to look at it, and I did ask Brian to look at it, but if you're on a bicycle and you're biking on Lombardi Access Road and you're going westbound, you hit the stop sign on Argonne. We've almost created a trap for the bicyclists, because you can only turn right and go out to Lombardi access, or to Lombardi Road. You can't turn left there to go southbound on Argonne. And if you try to get on the new trail that's located on the south side of the access road, you'd actually be bicycling illegally, because you'd be going counterflow in 3 lanes that are going to the north. So I asked Brian to take a look at that. We were kind of surprised when we got to that corner. We're like, oh, we want to go south on Argonne. We're like, crap, how do we do that from here? So take a look at it and see what you think. There's a sign there that says no left turns. And, you know, like I said, the bicyclist either has to go back and try to get on the trail, or do a U-turn if they want to go southbound on Argonne. So please look at it and see what you think. You know, Brian said there's not many bicyclists up there. I just went up there. I was just up there today to take one more look at it, and there was a bicyclist going through there on Argonne, on the frontage road, I should say. So I think we just need to think about it. Like Parkview, for instance, when Parkview was going to be closed on Ashland Avenue, we worked with the city of De Pere, and they kept an access through there for bicycles and pedestrians because there was a demand for it through there. And when I was talking to Brian today, he said, boy, when he comes through there, he sees bicyclists going through there all the time. And I think, and you know, his comment to me was there's not many bicyclists up in that area, which right now there maybe aren't, because it's been maybe difficult to bike through there, but now we've made it easier and better to bike and walk through. And I just would like us to take a look, or ask Brian and you guys take a look at that intersection and see what we could do to make it easier for a bicyclist that is on the road, which they are legal vehicles, so they can travel on the road, to turn left to get onto Argonne, because right now they cannot unless they do something illegal. And Brian Murphy, I would say, and maybe I'm wrong, but if there's someone's taking the left and they're going counterflow into all the traffic that's going to the north on a bicycle, is that legal or illegal?
If they're on the roadway, the bicycle's got to follow the same laws as a vehicle.
And at that intersection, if you're going on the access road, if you're in a vehicle, you can't turn left.
Correct.
Because all traffic goes to the right. So
Correct.
if bicycles have to follow the same rules as autos have to turn right. So, you know, and I bike there often enough because I bike to the grocery store.
Yeah.
But I don't know that there's a lot of people entering entering that frontage road west of Marley. So if you're coming down, you could go Marley to Brookwood and then that would get you up there.
Yeah.
So it may be a case of cyclists just have to learn how to do it.
Yes, but right now, they can't legally do it.
Well, but where are these cyclists coming from?
Maybe from the east, coming down from military, from the north.
Well, if you're coming from military, I mean, you cross Lombardy,
We'll take it.
you're on Marley, so if you just go to Brookwood, you don't have to take the frontage road.
If you want to take the frontage road.
Well, if you want to take the frontage road, then
Right.
you have to turn right. You know, what if a car wants to take the frontage road and wants to turn left? They can't. They have to turn right. So it would be nice if vehicles could do that, if cyclists could do that. But, you know, if a cyclist has to follow the same rules as cars, that's kind of the way the intersection was designed, is to feed the traffic out onto Lombardy. You know, so I don't know that that's a major route for cyclists.
It isn't now, but it could be.
Well, one thing that
Yeah.
I would say too is, ultimately with the closeness of those intersections, the reason that those medians were put into were to avoid the conflict points. So by allowing those bicyclists to take that left, you're essentially creating another conflict point. You're creating a safety hazard, where the reason that they put those medians in was to mitigate or get rid of all the conflict points with a right in and right out configuration. So that ultimately was one of the main points of why they kind of control intersections like that. Is it inconvenient for the bicyclist? Yeah, it absolutely is. Is it inconvenient for the motorist? Yep, it is. But we just kind of have to look to learn and adapt to it.
Okay. What else? Rex on the industrial park trail. Brian said they're gonna be repaving it. Are we taking out the bollards or leaving them in? Brian said he didn't know.
The bollards are staying, from my understanding.
So if we go back to that intersection that you brought up, what are we doing? Are we leaving it as is?
Correct. That whatever work was not
Done.
included in the scope.
Got it. So we've done
If a future project would be desired, then that would go through a process to get approved.
Okay, anything else, Brian, on your end?
I
Do
don't
you have any other questions? Okay.
So I wasn't familiar with that, but I see they actually have a median where you have to go to the top of the curve to go left. It splits it, right?
Yeah, there's a raised median.
Okay, park and rec.
Two things. I believe it is this Thursday, if weather allows, they're going to be doing a little bit of restriping by the trailhead at the north end of the lake parking lot for the Ashwaubenon River Trail, just to get cars away from the entryway and exit way of that trailhead a little bit more, make it a little bit safer for the cars to turn without the possibility of running into pedestrians right there. So we've got that going on. The next step, we'll take a look and see how that works. Potentially, it may need a bollard, but I'm not real excited about putting in a bollard right now. We're just going to see how the striping works on that particular site. And then also regarding the next phase of the Ashwaubenon River Trail, it's out for bid right now. Bids are due in about 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, if I'm remembering right. And that would be from the current trailhead around the eastern side of the park behind Ashwaubenon Lake, looping around behind on the backside of Newwater, and then around to the boat launch area. So that phase of the trail segment is out for bid, and we're fingers crossed that the pricing comes in where we are hoping for it to come in.
Thank you for all of that. The trail is used all the time by a wide variety of people. It is just wonderful to see.
That's great. I still don't know. I still think half the people don't even know it's there. I really don't.
But that's great to hear that it's picking up. I mean, that's what we're hoping for, is that it continues to be used and used by people that are in the park. I really think it's a great amenity for like people using the soccer fields and the baseball fields and everything else while kids are playing or practicing. You can go for a walk,
Picnics.
you know, picnickers, anybody like that. I think it's a real nice amenity. So thank you for recognizing that. We're trying to get the landscaping done. We're gonna have to, Tracy will laugh at us because she knows the wherewithals for that. We're gonna have to ask for a grant extension because they can't get the damn grass to grow. Or they're not putting the emphasis in it, so we're holding the money, and so technically the project's not done yet. So yeah, we're gonna have to ask for a grant extension, I think, which is due by next week, until the landscapers.
It's a
do
good
it.
reason to get an extension.
For lack of effort by a subcontractor.
I know.
This might be a silly question, but when they do complete the trail in around the lake and so forth, is there gonna be like extra security or anything? Because sometimes I'm alone in the lake area, a car could come.
There's no plans for extra security at this point. I mean, we don't have security, I guess, on any of our other sites or trails. If there would happen to be an incident, I mean, that's something certainly that can be brought to park board and built for, while getting a volunteer patrol or things like that. But as usual, the hope is that a trail is busy enough that security is not needed because so many people are using it that no one's going to try and do
Because if you're going along
near do well.
behind the water.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're out of sight.
Yeah.
I know what you're saying, yep. Especially a woman walking by herself, sometimes you think twice about that.
Well,
Yeah.
especially on the East River Trail, that incident. No, just.
Is that lighted?
At this point, it's not.
No.
Yeah,
Other than the bridge.
Yeah.
The bridge is.
Yeah. But that's
It's
an
lighted
issue.
to the trailhead, there's no
That's an
plans.
issue in any city.
It is,
You read
absolutely.
it, you hear and read about it all the time.
Yeah.
It can be daylight. If you got somebody that's got a mental issue, something going on, and you're in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Well, and Hidden Valley Park is the same way in Sherwood. You have to just be aware of your surroundings, and maybe you don't venture into the
What do you
wooded
think
area or
about,
whatever.
like for yourself, I don't know enough about it, like the mace or what's legal? Is mace legal to carry with
I
you?
have no idea.
Is it, Brian? Do you know?
Yeah, you can.
A small can of mace because at least you got something that's defensive, and then something that makes it. Yeah, there you go.
I believe it
There
was.
you go.
I believe it was the spring Public Works did a great job. It might have been the past fall. But they went in with one of the flail mowers and kind of widened the trail quite a bit so that it wasn't so closed. So I guess you could say not as many hiding spots, but they widened the trail, quite a few feet on either side, so that's a little more open and you can kind of see what's coming up. So that's always appreciated.
Yeah.
We'll continue to be doing it.
Yeah, you've done that. Yeah, I've noticed that.
Some people don't like that. Some people like a narrow trail where it's real woodsy and, but again, you have to enter in the safety factor on the whole.
Yeah.
That's it for me.
Okay. Wello does not appear, Kelly, did they send you anything?
I got something right. before.
And I'm sorry, Joel, I missed you. Go
No,
back
that's
to
fine.
7A, I'm sorry.
So that's fine, I'll cover it real quick. So they just indicated that they appreciate public safety for participating in 3 fraud initiatives. They indicated that overall Brown County had issued 111 warnings with 861 correctly yielding vehicles, so about an 89% compliance rate. That's pretty good. And then as Brian Murphy had mentioned, the next order will be on August 22nd. That's well.
Okay, thank you.
Our quick report administratively, Tracy had asked that I provide a quick update on a couple items. We are on the list with Brown County to do the update to our bike and ped plan. They need to make sure they go through their budget process first to make sure that they have the resources available to do the plan. Now, it is part of the NPO, so there should be resources. It just depends on how many other plans are being submitted for that. So we are on their list. They're going to let us know hopefully soon. If they don't, then we'll have to decide what we want to do, either conduct the planning process internally or consult with a third party. Either way, that would have to get incorporated into the budget. So Brown County is the free option. So as you can imagine, there may be others that want that same free option. It's just a matter of which one they can accommodate. They were going to do our comp plan last year, and because of some staffing changes at the county and some budget cuts, they eliminated a planner position, and as a result of that, they were no longer able to do our comp plan. So Aaron Schutte is doing our update right now. So hopefully that kind of issue doesn't come up with the bike and pet plan. But we are on their list, so we're just waiting to hear from them. Village wayfinding, we are in the process of getting proposals from a couple, 3 sign companies from the village to design welcome signs in the village, as well as the potential for locating some wayfinding signage. Our goal is to kind of create them under the same brand image. So if you see a welcome sign, it complements the wayfinding signs and vice versa. We have no idea what these things cost. So our first effort is to kind of come up with a couple to 3 design options and then what costs there would be. So there would be kind of a cheap version, the middle version, and then the knock your socks off version. And so we're waiting to get those proposals back, and then at that point, we can kind of figure out what does our budget look like, and based on that budget, that will kind of dictate where these signs can be located and the volumes of them. As you can imagine, with wayfinding signs, we can wayfind just about anything. So how many signs can we afford? And we wanted to get the cost first before we start kind of just picking and choosing what sites they are. But I would anticipate things like the Railroad Museum, Ashwaubenon Park, the PAC, the eventual new library at the Promenade. Those are going to be points of destination. So we'll probably be picking those things up as part of our wayfinding.
Do they actually study the value of that versus, I mean, most people go on the internet, go on the maps to find their.
Yeah, I think, and that's what we're kind of contemplating too, is that maybe more isn't necessarily needed because they're kind of an extension to your welcome signs, more of an extension of your brand. So finding more like prominent high traffic areas to put them up to create a brand image more than it is for you to actually find the location. If that makes sense.
Yep.
I want to do a redo on mine.
For the community center?
No. I want a redo on my report.
Oh.
Okay, we can go back.
So it jogged my memory when you said you're doing your comprehensive plan. So we're starting our corporate plan again. So every 5 years, Park and Rec Department does a comprehensive recreation plan where we solicit feedback from the community on different amenities and what the community wants in terms of park and recreation type facilities. And our first corporate meeting is going to be it starts this week, Wednesday night over at Ashwaubenon Park. So we'll be there in person. A lot of them are incorporated in either our food truck rally next week or a number of our neighborhood event nights, where we show movies in the park and things like that. So we've got at least 6 or 7 in-person meetings going on this summer. The first one starts this Wednesday night at 6 o'clock. It could be as short as a 5-minute meeting, or it could be a 15-minute if there's a lot of people. It depends. Every park is a little bit different in terms of how many people want to come out and give us feedback. We'll have forms there for you to fill out, or you can just talk to us verbally and we'll write information down. That all gets compiled and then is brought to the park board for what insertion may be necessary into the next 5 to 10 year plan that we've got going on. You can also fill that out online at the Park and Rec website. But it's always easier to talk to people, because once you're talking, then you think of other things pop up just through that conversation. But if you're interested in any park and rec things, i.e. trails, things like that, extensions that you think may be appropriate for Ashwaubenon, put your comments and thoughts down either in one of our meetings or online in the survey that is on our webpage.
I have a question. You see they're working on a park right now. It's pretty nice. Updating the equipment.
Oh, Waterford, yeah, we're pulling that out now while we have the time.
So the question is, because I'm seeing a lot of the newer parks having the thick, whatever you call it, rather than chips, wood chips. Is that a very expensive option?
The rubberized surfacing?
whatever, it's,
hard rubberized surfacing.
yeah, where you can step on it, it's
It
soft.
costs nearly as much as the playground equipment itself. So what we've done, you know, it'd be nice if a donor stepped up and said, hey, we're gonna give you about $250,000 for
Yeah.
playground with the rubberized surfacing. Until that happens, what we've done is we've divided the village up into quadrants. Each quadrant has an ADA technically accessible park, or not necessarily the whole thing is ADA accessible, but at least part of that playground equipment and some of the playboards is accessible off of the sidewalk that goes to the playground equipment. In your neighborhood, it would be, well, I know Smith Park is accessible.
I just had a list of all the waters in the paper, probably within the last couple of weeks here. So, the entire area, not just Ashwaubenon. I think we had one or two listed.
Yeah, we don't have what I see a lot, what makes the news a lot is when a facility does or community does what's called a universally acceptable. You're accessible, so universal accessibility, which means the whole playground is done. And that's usually what makes the news a lot and what probably is what some of those are. I'm sure. So to meet the ADA standards, we've divided that up. So there's got to be one park in every quadrant. And then each unique individual facility, i.e. whether it be the lake or whether it be, you know, the pickleball courts or something like that, each individual unique facility also needs to be accessible, which is what we've been working on. And I think we've done pretty decent over the years.
We have nice parks. If you ever go on one of those and you take your grandkids or kids there, you go, wow, this is pretty nice. And they seem to be more popular all the time.
They are.
So having said that, is it possible to do that after the equipment's there, or does it has to be done the same time you're putting equipment?
You'd have to redig everything out again.
Oh,
It's a lot easier to do it.
You would?
Yeah, it's a lot easier to do it
Okay.
when you're setting the equipment into the ground. Because there's bases involved, which means you need, you know, it's not just the rubberized surfacing. There's two ways to do it. You can either make the whole thing concrete and put the base on the concrete. What a lot of places do will be they'll do like 6 to 8 inches of gravel and put the rubberized surfacing on the gravel. However, that has the tendency, their ability to shift a little bit more. So it's a horse apiece on how you want to do it and how expensive, what you've got to spend on it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You probably got some maintenance there versus putting in a new load of chips.
And the chips need to continue to be replaced when you're dealing with wood chips, especially like around the merry-go-round or underneath the swing sets and things like that. But if you take a look over at over the one at Clipstein, we just had to redo the rubberized surfacing over there underneath the swing sets because of the usage. The shoes scraping on the rubber is the same thing. It wears the rubber down, and then you have to have different sections of that redone every so often because the rubber is wearing down to the base level. All right. So sorry.
Okay, anything else, Park and Rec? Anybody else need to go back? Otherwise, we're going to continue on. All right. Item 8 or 8A. It's items for discussion and possible action. Consider, discuss, act on a recommendation to the village board for project priorities for the next year and 5-year capital improvement plan. So 8A.
I'm going to take the lead on that. But before I do, I just want to mention to my group that I know Brian and I both have conflict, so we're going to probably going to have to jet out at 4:50 today. I think that's the latest we got to get out of here by. So we'll try to get through the bulk of the items, but I just want you to be aware of that so that we can prioritize our time with the remainder of the action items. As indicated in our work plan, the third quarter indicates the time period where we start working on our budget and our capital improvement plan. And so it's important for the committee to provide its recommendation to staff so that we can then present our recommendation to village board as it relates to the capital improvement plan and the ultimate fiscal year budget. So in your packet, you were given a working copy of that priority plan that this committee had evaluated. I believe it was back in March of this past year with a list of projects and kind of broken down by year and priority, as well as kind of a ballpark figure of budget. Beyond that, Public Works had submitted to me a list of projects that they've identified already for the next 5-year period in what will eventually be the capital improvement plan that'll go to the board, likely in some draft form in July with maybe a final version of it in August. So we have a kind of a couple months, if you will, to kind of work through this. So kind of going through the list that Brian had put together for this group to know and understand. In 2025, as has been recommended by the committee and approved by the village board, we'd be looking at installing bike lanes on South Point Road. So that would go from Cormier to State Highway 172. So if you recall, we're going to match in what Green Bay has to the north and extend that. The board did approve that. They just said that it needed to go forward into the 2025 budget. We have a number of projects in the general area, and we've had some conversations at the committee level regarding those rectangular rapid flashing beacons, or RRFBs. Those are going to be in relation to kind of those prior conversations. So you may have heard in the news, but tomorrow, in fact, there's a proposal being presented to the village to develop the corner of Holmgren and Cormier into 5-story mixed-use building with apartments on the first or the second and fifth floors, or through fifth floors, as well as some commercial common space on the first floor. Pretty substantial project, about a $34 million project. It's pretty sizable. In addition to that project, they are building a parking lot. Essentially, the developer is the same investment group that owns Rockers Baseball and the Epic Event Center. And so they're going to build a parking lot to support both the baseball operations and the Epic Event Center. And so as a result of that, we're going to see an uptick in parking and pedestrian travel. So as part of that project, we would like, or what we're proposing, is some type of mid-block crossing on Cormier to connect the parking lot to the Epic Event Center. There was a pedestrian, I think, crash there a few months ago. It related to that same activity. Somebody parked north of Cormier and were at the Epic, and they were trying to make their way back to the vehicle, or vice versa. So some type of mid-block crossing there that connects that parking lot to the strip center that Epic is at. And then as part of the discussion we've had, even though the board did not agree with the recommendation from the study that Brown County did with the Holmgren Way corridor, there was still discussion at this committee about installing some type of marked crossings or improved marked crossings on Holmgren to improve upon the crossing from east to west on Holmgren. So we're looking at those RRFBs on Marvell and Holmgren, as well as Bayland Court and Holmgren. So we'd have two kind of stationed on the north of the stadium here, and then one kind of south, if you will, of the stadium. Again, kind of picking up that pedestrian travel for people going to the baseball stadium for activities. Beyond that, and I see there's some pictures floating around the table of the Cormier sidewalk. So there's currently sidewalk on a significant portion of Cormier on the north side. That sidewalk is in pretty rough shape and does need repair or replacement. So that is being planned between Ridge and Shaker. That's a pretty sizable project. Beyond that, we are, as Brian had mentioned in the staff report, working on the Main Avenue Trail. We have a few issues from a planning standpoint and a design standpoint. So we don't know that we're necessarily confident that we'll be looking to build that trail in 2025. However, design and planning will continue. And so that project construction-wise would get pushed until 2026. I wish Leroy was here because right now he's got his Hanson Road sidewalk extension in 2026. So not soon enough, but we're getting there.
But it's in there.
2027, there's a section of Morris Avenue that's going to be reconstructed. I believe that's the start of our heavy water sewer utility replacement. And so now we're getting into a portion of work where we're doing a full reconstruct of the road. So that means surface, base, curb, gutter, everything, the whole 9 yards. Utilities comes out, all new stuff comes in, and that's a good time to begin installing other amenities into the project where you can design those amenities with the overall work. So from Holmgren to Ashland, that section of Morris will get redone. At present, based on plan policy, there is sidewalk proposed on that section in 2027.
So both sides.
I believe it's both sides,
Yeah.
right? That's how we had. it set
Fairly
up.
certain it's both sides. I'd have to double check, but.
And then 2028, there's a sidewalk extension on Ridge Road between Sand Acres and Main Avenue, and I think that was on our priority plan list. And then Morris Avenue continues with further reconstruction between Barberry and Oneida. And again, that's a full reconstruct, so everything comes out, all new goes in, and that would be sidewalk as well on that stretch. I believe we are reconditioning, are doing mill pave on Morris west of Barberry.
Yep, we're actually west of Ridge this year.
So west of Ridge on Barberry is gonna be a number of years before that gets reconstructed. So
Correct.
Just to put that as a reference, because that road is getting mill paved this year, so we do intend to get the full useful life out of that resurface before it gets reconstructed.
Joel, when Cormier Road was redone, we have bike lanes there now. Any chance, any chance that when Morris is reconstructed, we could get bike lanes there, or is that sort of a wishful thinking?
Well, so there is a parking lane, there that, it's not necessarily a bike lane, but it will be wide enough that our desire is to limit parking or widen out the road. It's something that we could discuss at kind of the scope of the cross section of the roadway looks like. The one thing that gets a little bit more challenging when you increase your impervious surface, so say you want to add parking and bike lanes, then you're going to trigger a bunch of stormwater requirements. So one of the things that we'll need to look at when we go to do the reconstruct is trying to keep our impervious surfaces similar to what it is now. So that'll have to kind of determine where we want to put our priorities.
Okay.
Do we want a sidewalk? Do we want a bike lane? Do we want to get rid of parking on one side? All things that will have to be considered.
From a process standpoint, right now, the plan doesn't identify Morris as being a bike lane facility, so a location where bike lanes would be present. So I know we're going through the bike and ped plan update, so I would incorporate that. If that's a recommendation of this committee, it would get incorporated as either an amendment or part of the update to the bike and ped plan, and then ultimately village board would need to weigh in on that scope. And the reason why I say that is because I think that particular location may be challenging for the board in relation to the stadium. So if you install the bike lane without extending or expanding the width of the road, the profile, you're going to eliminate parking. And parking there in close proximity to the stadium, I'm guessing, is going to be a challenging topic to understand. Could you expand, as Brian mentioned, if you extend or widen the road, if there's sufficient right of way, sure. But then that lends itself to other challenges. So it's just, as Brian mentioned, it's what are the priorities, what can we fit? Not saying no to anything. There's just a stepped process in order to do that.
So it's something we have to think about and possibly discuss and, factor in the changes in usage of that area. It used to be 1 or 2 story buildings with lots of trucking parking, and now you have 4 and 5 story apartments there. So it's the nature of the area has changed as far as the
Right. Yep. Yeah. And what does it connect to? I mean, obviously, there's all things. I think you got to look at it comprehensively. So if you only do that section between Holmgren and Ashland, what does that connect to from a light standpoint? I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It's just, I think those are all things that we have to take into
Question. So this would be my first time through this, where we're gonna set the calendar for the few years and whatever. So how rigid or flexible, if we vote on this, is this?
So the only thing that's really rigid is really what's next year, because that's the hard number that we really need to press on, because now we got to develop plans, specifications, and a formal budget that we get incorporated into 2025. Anything that's 2026 and later, those can ebb and flow, and they do. Project scope changes, years change, something becomes a priority, it gets bumped, gets moved back, moved forward. Those are fine. It's really just what are we comfortable with for next year, knowing that over the next 4 or 5 years, this is our plan of attack.
Okay.
The board is going to look at ultimately, obviously funding sources too. So what we're looking at is project. Maybe this committee isn't so focused on expenditure, but the board certainly needs to be. So you're really looking at the overall project list. From a staff perspective, we can certainly kind of advocate for trying to balance, right? We don't want to have a year where we have $12 million in expenditures, and then the next year we have 500,000. And then next year after that, there's 600,000. Is there a way to spread that out? Sometimes there's not, because you might just have that one year where you have a full reconstruct on, let's say, Cormier from X distance to X distance. It's just a big project. So we know that we're going to have that expense. And that's a commitment that the board then has to make.
That's helpful. Thank you. Can I ask another question? Okay, so these.
You use these questions up like a cat with 9 lives.
Yeah, right.
I know.
She's gonna keep asking another one until we say, we tell you, told you yes.
These photos that you submitted are related to the Cormier sidewalking thing, right?
That's right.
And I'm thinking back, Brian, you had explained as you moved into your position, there were like multiple sources of information you were bringing all together on things. So just briefly, so I understand, how do you monitor the sidewalk sections in the village to know what one next and the rate they're deteriorating?
Yeah, so honestly, we don't, so the streets, we have a formal, it's a PASER process. It's a formal process that you follow, all local governments do. Sidewalks aren't like that. Honestly, sidewalks, it's strictly based on our guys out doing snow removal. They a lot of times bring it to my attention when things are getting in very, very rough shape. We also have a crew that goes out, that replaces curb. They also inspect sidewalks, but we don't have a formal rating process for sidewalks. It's generally, we do have, I would say 15% of our roads have sidewalks on it, so it's a small percentage. So have a pretty good mental note, but there's no formal process that there is. From what I'm aware of, is Cormier, this northern section of Cormier is by far the worst sidewalk in Ashwaubenon. So we're kind of addressing that, but is there much like our trail system? We don't have a formal rating process. Is it something that we could put in place? We could. Of course, it would require staffing, and that's something that maybe we could see if we have the staffing to do it. But there is larger communities that literally they have a sidewalk, inspection department. That's all that they do is they have a summer help student go out and check the sidewalks to see their condition. So it's not as easy to rate sidewalks as streets because you can't, streets you can drive right down them and look, and you can't drive your vehicle down it and look, and you physically have to walk or ride a bike.
Thank you.
Yep.
And the sidewalks in our community, we pay for it, correct? The resident does not pay for them.
Correct. Yep. That's been kind of a standing village
Yep.
policy that it's always been that way. And I think it's good if we can continue to fund it. There is many other municipalities, majority of municipalities, they charge it back, especially assess it back to the adjacent homeowner.
Whether you want the new sidewalk or not.
Correct.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah. The sidewalk.
Some let you grind it,
Yeah.
so they're flat again. They give you the option, you can have it ground, and they have a company come in and they give a discount for it. It appears like that.
I think if we were to have sidewalks on every village street, I think it's easier to let the residents know that they're gonna get an assessment for that repair, but when you only have them on very limited streets, and everybody theoretically benefits from it, but the only individual that has to pay for it is the adjacent property owner, it becomes very politically challenging.
I had two questions quick. What about the sidewalk that goes from the new senior workforce development facility and that goes on to Mike Van Park on Borvan? When is that going in, or what is the status of that?
So that particular project was requested as part of the
development,
development agreement,
right?
and then that was pulled out because we did not provide the tax incremental financing. So that was not approved as part of the development agreement. So at present, that is not on any developer to complete.
So that's done, that's not gonna happen, and it's not.
Not unless the village identifies it and does it itself. So the village could do it, but the developer is not expected to do it based on the agreement.
And then Van Buren, the sidewalk on Van Buren, that one from Oneida to Holmgren, on the south side of the road. If that one maybe could be moved up a little further, the road was redone like a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. And then the sidewalk was not put in. Yeah, I think that was
The south side of
important.
Adjourn, is that right?
Yes,
That was kind of being done when they got here. So.
yeah. Cause there's no, it's hard to get like to the post office or because there's no sidewalks on Hanson. And to get to the post office or down that way, there's just not a way to go.
I was under the understanding, speaking with our village engineer, that we were gonna wait until that southwest corner of Vanderpeer and Holmgren Way developed.
Mhm.
To kind of see what that brought, because that kind of takes care of a third of that sidewalk, have it be part of their
And
development.
they'd have to do it.
Correct,
Okay.
so whether or not that's what the thought process was, that I know when I was talking with Steve, our village engineer, that's what the initial thought was, is as part of the development agreement for that site, require it at that point in time, and would either follow after or piggyback their installation.
I think there's some right-of-way issues too. There's some constraints on that corner. And I think that was part of it, where we have the fires of the right-of-way or have some right-of-way or easement dedicated to the village to accommodate it.
Okay.
Right where that radius is.
Right. And then the only other one I thought maybe was important was the South Ridge Road from Cormier to Valley View up by the stadium. Just because it's so, there's so many people walking up in that area and there's no sidewalk on the east side of Ridge. So that's the only one that when I looked through the list, I thought maybe should be moved in one of the years, because that to me is an important area to make sure people can walk
So prior to
easily.
me starting here, it's my understanding that project did kick off. And it did receive very, very negative feedback. And then public safety, Brad, I don't know if you're aware of this, but between Valley View and Morris, there was a strong desire to not have sidewalk on that east side. So between the two factors, we haven't progressed forward on it. Kind of just eliminated the project unless there's a desire to have it there. But I know there was an individual that went out to kind of just collect information and kind of kick the project off from a public information standpoint, and it did not go well. So.
So
But it
a
can-
lot of
it can
that's
be-
gotta be Packer owned, right?
Yeah, there's
Down
only
right of Wage,
4
those?
homes that will be
Yeah.
there, well, from Valley View to Morris. So if you
Okay.
go beyond that, obviously, but from Valley View to Morris, there's the Baptist church, that's coming down soon. And then there are 4 homes, I think 2, if not 3 out of those 4 are short-term rentals too. I'm sure.
Yeah, which would be nice to have sidewalks that could buzz up right up to the stadium from
They
there.
don't want to do it, parking,
Pardon?
park cars there.
So what?
Well,
I think
So it's
I'm just
it's
saying
okay,
that's the
and
other
then
side of
people-
the.
It's not safe for the residents.
at least from
I agree.
Morris to Valley View, as Brian had mentioned, it has been a project, so if that's a priority for the committee, I would recommend putting it in there. But we could put it in the capital improvement plan if that's what the committee desires, and ultimately the board will have to decide if it wants to have that battle.
Yeah.
For some of these decisions are political in nature.
Yeah.
Sometimes people have the appetite to address it, and other times they don't.
Yeah. Just some that I saw, but the other ones are
Yeah,
fine too.
no, I remember that discussion well.
You don't remember?
I do remember.
Oh, you do? Yeah,
I
I'm
actually
gonna say
think
it
I have a
was-
neighbor that owns one of those. So.
But other than that, I thought the list was good.
Can I ask on 2028, maybe I missed this, so the Ridge Road sidewalk between Sand Acres and Maine, I don't remember there being a sidewalk proposed for Ridge Road. I thought we were going to be doing a trail extension, because we've got the utility easement that goes along that part, that goes from Sand Acres Drive to the north end of Sand Acres Park, so I thought the access off of Main Avenue to Sand Acres is going to be that trail. We were just waiting for the van property to develop so we can connect it to the cul-de-sac.
Yeah, that would be out on that little sub road, Arts.
Yeah, on
Arts Road.
Arts, correct.
And
So I thought,
that would definitely be an option for connectivity. I know that I've heard you talk about that previous, Rex, and that's something that we could maybe talk about more. Obviously, it's pretty far out, but it's.
yeah, I mean, if you're going to do it, if we're going to do it, so be it. I mean, I'm
Right.
saying, it seems like the trail would be a
better
I would agree.
cost-effective measure, because it's really just crusher dust. You know, obviously you have to be under gas line supervision because it
Yep.
follows the gas line.
Yep.
But I know that's always been talked about, is that being connected to main, but
And maybe this project changes from, that to, Arts Lane, because Arts Lane essentially is like a glorified driveway right now. And, obviously we should build that road at some point in time to meet village standards and get the trail on the side of it, like we had discussed, so.
especially if there's the van property sells and
Yep.
that becomes a holding development back in there, that I don't know if that is going to be planned to be an entryway into that development or not, or if there's going to be a back door by Woods Edge.
I don't know that, but I
Looks
know
like there's a couple different dead ends, Pagel's Place, Arts Lane, so there's a area, I don't know if that's technically to Pier Lawrence there, but that Pond's Edge Court terminates in the van property. So it looks like there's gonna be street connectivity, potentially if it were to develop.
So I saw it on there and I just needed to mention that.
Yeah, no, I think
That one, I was kind of
that's a
like, I
good
don't remember that
conversation to
one.
have. Maybe we can
It could just be
rescope
added
it.
and or something, and
Instead of
let's put the
sidewalk,
trail
just
in there or
connectivity.
whatever,
Yeah.
just because it's, it's there, we have the easement for it, so it's a good option, maybe even both, who knows, Just help us. All right, anybody else have any other questions or suggestions on any other projects? Like Joel said, and Kim asking the question, it can change. I mean, really, 2025 is the one that is already budgeted, starting soon probably. But the other ones, things change, development changes, something occurs, whatever, and other years could potentially change and something moves up the list. So we're not set that we have to say, okay, this is exactly what we're doing, except for the ones on Ridge, or not, on Hanson, because Leroy would not be happy. That one's got to stay put.
That goes.
Yeah.
The only thing I'll mention too, and Rex mentioned in his report, Ashwaubenon River Trail extension is going to be likely started this year. Is there potential for it to extend into 2024 to finish it? Yeah. It's not on the list because it starts this year, but that is another substantial project that will be completed as well.
Right. Do we need a motion on that then, Joel, for the list that's
If you're
here?
comfortable with the list as it is, then you're more than welcome to make that motion if you'd like to discuss it
I
over.
would say we make the motion because it sounds like we can adjust
Yes.
in
All
future years if we have.
right, then make the motion.
I'll make the motion to accept the, what do you call this?
Capital.
Yeah, capital.
Pioneer capital improvement.
Okay, motion by Dale,
Second.
second by Sharon. You take it. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, and thank you for your work on this, staff. Making it clear and easy to go through.
Hey, Joel, just a real quick question before we move on. So when we do these types of things, does the board take a number that they allow us to have changes made to streets and sidewalks out of the total budget? Or or do we just present certain things that need to be done and then they take those numbers, estimated numbers, and use that in the total budget and say, because they could vary quite a bit, just like you said before. So they don't really take a number and say, okay, this is all we're going to do. Like, I guess a good example is when we talked about clearing the paths for the winter. We set a number. Do they do that when it comes to future?
No, capital projects are gonna be a little bit different because you're gonna have just a smattering of other projects and other priorities. So it's gonna come down to, how much tax levy is available towards capital projects? What is our current debt capacity or what I'll call, it's not really this, but like debt ratio. So we have a certain debt amount that we maintain. We try to maintain that debt amount because it doesn't affect our levy limit. So if we change that, then we lose levy capacity to it. So we try to really maintain that same debt level. So depending if debt level is coming off or coming on, that may offer additional proceeds. And then from there, it's like, okay, let's say we have $10 million to do capital projects. Now it becomes we have $20 million worth of proposals. All right, well, which ones are the priorities? So then they prioritize them against each other and then ultimately present a final like $10 million.
So we might win one of those.
You might.
Yep, okay. That's what I was looking for.
There's
Thanks.
usually a lot more projects than
Yeah,
there's money.
yeah,
so
I'm sure.
just be
I'm
aware of
sure.
that, but- So a lot of times it just comes down to, okay, where are we hearing a lot of complaints? So if you hear a lot of complaints on Cormier Road, it's like, oh, we really got to get that done, right? If we've been sitting on it, Leroy's project on Hanson Road, we've been talking about that a long time. Let's get it done, right? So there's a little bit of that appetite as well.
Thanks.
You know, Ryan?
Yeah.
I can
Joel
help
and
walk through
Brian,
a
you guys
couple
gotta
of
leave,
things.
or
Yeah, I can help kind of
get
set the
started at
stage
least,
for
okay.
these ones.
Item V8B is considered discuss act on any amendments, revisions for the comprehensive bicycle and pedestrian plan as necessary based on recommended project plans.
So again, just kind of trying to follow our timeline of events throughout a calendar year. This is one of those items, so in the third quarter, begin talking about if there's a need to update or amend the comprehensive plan. So the idea behind that is once a year, as a committee, let's make a singular recommendation to the village board versus coming in every month after a meeting with different singular items. That being said, just trying to follow that calendar, we obviously are in the process where we're going to update the comprehensive plan next year. So there, in my opinion, there isn't a lot of need or substantial need to go through and do any singular amendments at this time. If we do have those, let's note them so that they can be identified in the update that is conducted next year. I think that, to me, gives you the biggest bang for your buck. Beyond that, at our last meeting a couple months ago, there was a discussion on visually narrowed lanes. And so we had a pretty robust conversation on that. One of the requests was, where are these currently located? There was some conversation that the plan had been done in 2018. There may have been some road projects that were completed where the striping was not maintained during that process. So could we get an up-to-date inventory of where those are located? So we did do that. I, in fact, went through the entire village and mapped out where those are, had Francine produce a map. That's included in your packet. By and large, despite what our policy states, and this extends for many years, most of the roads that have visually narrow lanes, if they were milled and paved, the lines were brought and painted back in. And the reason for that is oftentimes we're not doing a full corridor when we do mill pave, we're doing a section. And so you have like a 2-block section where it's an older street and has the lines, a 2-block section of brand new surface where it doesn't have lines, and then let's say another 2 blocks of old section that has the lines. So Public Works, this is not recent, this has just been their perpetual effort, is when a road gets repaved, they have restriped the visually narrow lanes. There are 2 sections that currently do not have the visually narrow lanes as a result of resurfacing, but the plan was to restripe those. One of those is on Prairie, and I believe the other one was on Comanche. So if you look at Prairie and Comanche, you see these like Packerland to Clive and Babcock to Pioneer. There's a gap between Packerland and Clive and Babcock and Pioneer. So they're usually like 2 to maybe 3 block sections. You have a map in your packet as well as to where those are located. In the map, the blue lines indicate the visually narrow lanes. The red lines actually indicate bike lanes. So I think at the time that the bike and ped plan was adopted, I don't know that we had any formally designated bicycle lanes at that time, but we do now. So as an example, South Broadway was reconstructed, I think maybe shortly before the plan was adopted, actually. I'm trying to think, 2017, 2018-ish. There have been visually narrow lanes there. Now that has been replaced by designated bike lanes. There is a section on Cormier, primarily between Ashland and I believe Oneida Street, that has designated bike lanes, and there are sections of Hanson that also have designated bike lanes. And so those ultimately replaced what was at one time visually narrow lanes. A couple other things I'll note on Cormier. There's a section of Cormier that has the V&Ls, so that would be primarily west of Ridge. And then bike lanes east of Oneida, so there's a few block section between Ridge and Oneida where there's nothing for VNLs or bike lanes. And the reason for that is it goes from a 2-lane road to like a 4 or 5-lane road back to a 2 or a 4-lane road, or it's a section of road that got reconstructed. So there's a few of those instances as well in the village. Morris Avenue is another one of those areas where there's a section of road that was reconstructed on Morris. It was widened. There is not a VNL, but there are designated parking areas on Morris. So that was just recently reconstructed, and there's a line, but then there are segmented blocks for parking. So you can see, obviously, connectivity is a little bit challenging there.
And I see you put in here that we'll review and revise the policy related to this, because as we talked about, like Daisy Lane, that's a one-block street. So from a stop, start, continue perspective, why would we be doing this on Daisy Lane? Probably advocacy at the time it started, but that's not an even application of anything, right? So we will look at this and decide which is stop, start, continue.
Yeah, I think ultimately when we do, we don't need to make any decisions tonight.
Yep.
So I think it's a look at it, and then when we go through the plan update, how do we really want to address the VNLs? In the past, there's been this desire to say that these are pedestrian facilities. Based on the last committee meeting, I don't think that this committee is in that position. We definitively want to say that there's no such thing as a VNL. We're gonna just call it that. They're gonna be fog lines, right? Or they're going to be paved shoulder lines, and that's what they are. Pedestrians can walk in a road whether the line is there or not. So they're not going to be really designated as such. That was the impression that I got from the last committee meeting.
So we're thinking about eliminating.
Yeah, so we can create a map that shows where the fog lines are painted, but we're not going to call them visually narrowed lanes per se, because there's no standing statute for that.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
It does make sense.
If I understand what the committee discussed last
I'd be
month.
surprised how many people in the village even know what a VNL is.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I didn't until I got on this committee.
People can walk there.
Yeah.
They're welcome to walk in the road. Obviously, they need to do it
Yeah.
safely and according to law. But it's not a designated pedestrian accommodation per se.
We'd be far better off to figure out how to get them to walk against traffic.
Yeah.
Versus painting a line for them, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, I just don't get it.
And wear bright colored clothing or some type of
Yeah,
reflective
that
clothing.
too, that too.
Educate.
So with that, in your packet as well, I think it was requested at the last meeting, there's an updated functional classification map. And where that becomes important is that these are roadways that are considered arterial or collector from a metropolitan planning organization or NPO standpoint. So these roads are eligible beyond local roads for state and or federal funding for grants. Oftentimes, these are heavier traveled roads, so higher volumes of traffic, potentially at higher rates of speed, depending on where it is, of course. And so these streets are generally connecting other points of interest within your community. They're not necessarily designated by the village. These are designated through the NPO. These are probably the facilities, or I shouldn't say facilities, these are the roads that this committee may want to take a look at as it goes through and updates its plan next year as to where future facilities should be located. And oftentimes these roads have them, but they may not have full connection, things of that nature. There was some talk last month or 2 months ago about complete streets and the idea of evaluating roads to accommodate a complete street strategy. This is probably the map where you would want to start that. Oftentimes you'll be able to secure state or federal monies to help support those types of projects as well.
And in this instance, we're talking about, I get this right, the orange.
Yeah, anything green or orange is going to be important to
Okay.
us.
All right.
So if you think of it this way, the collector or the minor arterials are roads, like Joel said, that are more heavily traveled by motor vehicles, but they also are desires for bicyclists and pedestrians, because the services are typically along those roads. That's why you have more vehicles, motor vehicles traveling on it. So that's why it's important when those roads are being updated or changed or whatever, that we think about bicyclists and pedestrians, because they want to get to the same places that the motor vehicle drivers do. So that's typically where, like most of the neighborhood roads that maybe most of us live on, you wouldn't really have to look for a bike lane on there because they're fine, they're slow, there's not a lot of traffic on it. You don't really need a bicycle facility on there. You need sidewalks, but just have that many sidewalks. So that's why it's important to understand what our roads are categorized as, because there's some funding available potentially to require multimodal when you're reaching the road. So like Cormier Road, the only reason we have bike lanes on that section of Cormier is because they did get, I think federal money for that, so they required the village to put bike lanes on that section between Ashland and Oneida, otherwise it probably would not have been there. Which is great that it's there. So yeah, I mean, I think it's something we can look at. I would like one more thing, Joe, if we could maybe get a cost of what it costs the village to stripe out the B&Ls every year.
Sure.
Because that's a big number. I mean, if you look at how many B&Ls we have in our community, and do we need them any, and how much money, and, you know, the bike lanes sometimes, expensive in the bike lanes could used to be redone on some of the roads that don't get redone maybe as often as they should. Maybe some of the money can go towards keeping that up, than, you know, having B&Ls everywhere, just to kind of look at different ways.
They probably don't do those every year though, do they? Every street, I doubt it.
I don't know that it's been every year, but I think we
Yeah.
try to anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty substantial.
It probably is.
Yeah.
So I'm going to, if I may interject, I know I'm not a committee member, I'm only an advisory committee member. But I was unfortunately not at the last meeting for this discussion. I'm being on vacation with my family. But I've always been, and Tracy knows this, I've always been a proponent of the B&Ls. There are some sections that I certainly, and I don't want to rehash this or reopen old wounds again. But I would highly suggest, or even suggest, that you ask the community what they think of the B&Ls or fog lines, whatever you want to call them. Because I think they have a comfort level of walking in them. And I know, I see you walking in them, I walk, dozens and dozens and dozens of people every night are walking, and it gives them the comfort level. Now, is it truly a comfort or a safety level? That's a discussion point, but then I would put it on public safety to come up with a report on how many accidents or pedestrian issues there have been because of the fog lines or bike lane or the B&Ls. And I'm going to say it helps the drivers stay within their zone, and it helps the walkers stay within their zone. And yes, people can park there, but I still think it benefits the community. The community is used to it. And I think if you polled the community, my own personal opinion, you would find that the majority of the people who use them would want them kept the way they are. So like I said, I don't want to, I'm only saying this because I was not able to be at the last meeting, and I'll get off my soapbox on that.
So something to think about for the committee, because again, certainly no decision has to be.
Right. I'm speaking as a resident.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we discussed when we update the bike and pedestrian plan, so it can be part of that whole discussion and see, where we want to go, but we don't have to make any decision. So this just kind of give you some information to think about as we move forward. Any other questions on that, you guys, on either the B&Ls or the process for the bike plan?
Tracy, as we move to the last agenda item, I can be here till about 5 after, but you'll still be at quorum.
If nothing else, since Joel's got to leave too, we could table C.
Yeah,
For now,
the only thing I
then
have,
put
so
it
it was, we met a few months ago on this particular item, and I received clear direction from the committee then, if you recall the conversation, that the committee wanted to recommend that electric bikes be viewed as bicycles and have afforded the same rules and responsibilities that a general bicyclist would have. But we talked briefly about scooters, but we didn't really give direction about scooters. So just briefly, scooters could be regulated in the same manner as bicycles. They will be identified separately in order to meet the statute. But it really comes down to the question of, do you want to allow electric scooters on sidewalks or trails? Because you do currently allow bicycles and are proposing a change in ordinance that would allow electric bicycles the same on trails and sidewalks. So the question is, do you want to allow scooters?
Define scooter.
So a scooter would be those electric scooters, a two-wheel device that basically has some type of electric motor that.
Almost mini motorcycle.
So it would be
No,
motor.
No,
not
like
really
that.
motorcycle.
Like a flat scooter.
Oh, a standing
Yeah.
Just
skateboard?
stand
Like
on
a
it.
standing
okay.
skateboard.
And it would be motorized versus using your foot to push it.
Okay.
So we can certainly table it, there's no rush.
They're on our trail.
Oh, man, there's a lot of
I
them out
think
there now.
enforcement.
They're everywhere.
Yeah,
It's like a whole
even if you
enforcement.
disallowed it, enforcement would be a whole nother topic.
We're gonna be there anyway. Yeah, maybe we could table it and come back to it.
So that's the question,
Yeah,
is what do we think we want to do?
with the electric ones too, bikes, they have those 3 classes. I think we need to really determine those two, because class C or 3, a 16 and under cannot even use them. And I'm sure there's kids all over the community that are using those ones that go to a speed of 28 miles per hour. And if they're out on the trails and they're out on our sidewalks, it's gonna be a problem.
Mhm.
So I think we need to look at it a little closer with the speed of them as well. And I know it's almost possible to enforce, and I think education is a big part of this whole thing too. We need to educate parents, we need to educate kids, we need to educate law enforcement, we need to educate everybody. Because there's just so many of them. I mean, everyone said here, look how many more bikes are out there, electric bikes, regular bikes, scooters, I mean, they're everywhere. And it's a matter of time till someone gets killed on them. I mean, it really is.
Yeah, when you're
Because
going
they're just
30
out of-
miles an hour.
And they're
And that helmet.
And
and no helmet, and they have
Right.
no
No
concept of
enforcement.
traffic rules in the road because they're under 16. They don't even have a driver's license yet. So 13-year-olds cruising on the road at 28 or 30 has no idea which side of the road to even be on or where they should cross, and they're cutting people off. So
Wasn't didn't the death happen on Packerland in 172,
that's a long time.
right, about 10 years ago? Wasn't that on a reduced, like a more of a scooter
Like
type
he
of
got
thing?
picked off a car, I think went into him. He wasn't doing anything wrong, and they picked him off. It was a young man. I'm thinking of the same accident.
They don't, so they don't have reflectors. I think the newer ones now have some type of a light on the back, but the older ones, there's nothing there
Yeah.
that you can even see.
I mean, they're just everywhere. So yeah.
It's just the body on the side of the road.
So maybe we could just make a motion to table to our August.
So are these, before you do that, so
Sorry.
are these ordinances, these are the up-to-date ordinances that's with this back?
So you have the current ordinance in your packet along with references to statute.
Okay.
And the staff memo identifies the statutes that give the village authority to create an ordinance that would then restrict or regulate the use of those types of devices. Scooters can be regulated similarly to bicycles, but in addition to those regulations, you can also restrict scooters on certain mile per hour roads. So it'd have to be a road posted fewer than 35 or 25 miles per hour. So you could say no scooters on a 45 mile per hour road.
So yeah, maybe look at those a little closer, you guys, and see. I mean, the village ordinance are pretty basic. There isn't a lot in it really. And the state statutes obviously are huge, but they give some good ideas on what we can do, what we can't do, and you can't totally prohibit per se by like no bicycles can come in your community. You can't do that, or you could do that with electric bikes, but you can choose.
If you can restrict them on sidewalks,
Right.
you could theoretically restrict them on trails. And you could do the same with scooters or these electric kind of devices, if you will, these electric standing skateboards. You could do that.
Yeah. Okay, if someone want to make a motion, maybe to table and put on our August meeting, and everyone take a look at it.
I'll motion to table 8C to our next meeting, which is
August, whatever.
Well,
Yes.
second it.
Was a second, I was in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Anyone have any items, 9 is items for next agenda? Anybody have anything they would like to see on this besides this one that we just moved out? Anything else? If you think of anything, let me know or get a hold of Ellie or Joel or whoever. Next meeting is scheduled for Monday, August 12th. Same time, same place. A motion to adjourn is in order.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Dale, second by Sharon. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Thanks, Haley.
We're done.
Good job there.
Yeah, thanks for messing with that.
So the CIP, we're gonna give them an initial draft review just